What's happening YouTube? PokePhD here. Finally getting around to making another video. As I'm sure, or as I hope you've noticed, my background has in fact changed, and that is because I have in fact moved to a new place. Moved from my old place in central London to another place in central London. So not too much of a change in locale and scenery, but moved into an entirely new property. So of course I was like super backed up. First finding the place, then of course moving in, signing all the paperwork, furnishing, getting everything settled. So taking some time, but I would say at this point reasonably kind of comfortable, moved most things in, and a bit of time now I guess to put together some videos. I've also been pretty much slacking with all the Instagram stuff as well, so I've been pretty low-key with the Pokemon stuff. The only thing I've really been keeping on top of is just eBay and just making sure the sales were kind of up to scratch, and you know, still making a decent number of sales. The only problem is when you're moving your entire inventory, and by inventory I mean every single thing you own on the planet, and then obviously trying to find all the things you've sold in between every other day. It's a bit of a pain, a bit of headache, but thankfully most of that's sorted now. Things are pretty simple and kind of back to normal in regards to that, at least. Just trying to stay on top of things as usual. Had some trouble as well with eBay, and maybe something I'll talk about in the future, just because it was a pretty huge pain for me at the time. And then obviously with every other thing going on, it's like, you know, I'm sure you've been there before. Everything in life seems to kind of pile up at once. All the troubles come at once and then eventually go, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of been the story the last, it's been now almost 2 months. I managed to get a few videos out in between, but nothing really where I could sit down, relax and take my time and think of something to talk about and put something together. But hopefully getting back to kind of scheduled programming, as they say, from now on. So yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting back on the content grind, getting those subscriber counts up, views, all that kind of stuff, and just getting back to doing what I really enjoy, which is talking about Pokemon, right? And what I wanted to talk about today is just a little bit about some of the newer sealed products. I've seen quite a few people at this point talking about what I'm going to talk about, I guess, in this video today, and generally just wanted to, a lot of it's probably just going to be agreeing with a lot of what's been said already, maybe a caveat here and there just to give my perspective. No point kind of just immediately repeating what everyone else has said, but there's a couple of things, a couple of videos that I watched as well in regards to this that I thought were interesting takes. The first being from Rudy Alpha Investments, someone who I do watch reasonably regularly. I'm not into Magic at all, actually, which is interesting, but I really do enjoy his Pokemon content, and generally just I like him as a personality, I guess. So I just, you know, just like the way he kind of talks and projects and gets his videos and stuff across. So even if he's talking about Magic, I might even tune in, but obviously mostly kind of stick to the Pokemon stuff. Sure, you're all aware of the Pokemon, what is it, like the cave, the bathroom cave of old sealed product. That was probably the first time I ever actually watched any of his videos, and from then I've kind of kept probably dipping my toes in and out with him. But as I said, I really enjoyed his content, and he was talking recently about the newer Pokemon sealed product, and by that he meant the new Scarlet and Violet. So this was Scarlet and Violet based, and then of course now Paldea evolved the first two sets of the Scarlet and Violet era, at least in the for the English product. Japanese, completely different story. Not the topic of conversation for the video today. I have actually missed out talking about a lot of that kind of crazy stuff. I've been keeping an eye on things as much as I can, but yeah, topic for another day. But basically, in the video he mentioned that he saw a lot of like analogies between the beginning of Scarlet and Violet and the beginning of Sword and Shield, in that he saw, like, as far as he was concerned, I'm obviously like kind of redacting and giving a summary of what he said, so basically bastardizing what he said. So I would recommend you check it out for yourself, but generally the point was he sees a lot of those similarities, and in that he's just saying, you know, what we're seeing with Scarlet and Violet sealed product give it some time, we're going to see something similar to what we've seen with Sword and Shield. And if you now look at the prices of Sword and Shield base, Rebel Clash, Darkness Ablaze, not so much, but even then it's not doing terribly. Vivid Voltage, those two in particular have been picking up recently, not making huge strides, for example, but I think, you know, 6 to 8, maybe 6 to 9 months, you could pick up Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze for 120 a box, maybe a little bit less if you were careful about how much or when you were buying. And now you're already picked up 140, 150 is probably the minimum you can expect to get those two sets. Sword and Shield base, Rebel Clash, or like, especially Sword and Shield base is stupid expensive. I actually opened some sealed product just to get the packs out of it some time back. I believe it was some of the like the starter pack celebration stuff, like the Universe, Johto, all that kind of stuff, and some of it had some Sun and Moon packs which were okay, and some had some Sword and Shield base. So basically just kept a hold of those rather than, you know, getting rid of them for $4 or $5 a piece. So I thought it might be worth holding on to. But basically he was saying Pokemon is pretty much going to be a hit, at least sort of the new Scarlet and Violet sets, and you know, it doesn't make sense, or at least it's such an easy kind of play to see that where the prices are now with Scarlet and Violet, which are rock bottom basically, you can't really do any worse than that, right? So why not just pick up a few boxes? And I watched that video and immediately I was like, no, I don't really agree. I'll go through in a second. There were some points, of course, I did agree with, as with most takes, right? We're not. I'd like to think most people, at least in the Pokemon community, well, people who'd be watching this kind of video, for example, and maybe in some of the groups and in the Discord channels and watching similar content creators, are not as reactionary as most people might be. So it's kind of like, okay, he said these things, but there are some truths to what he said. For example, being that the prices are ridiculously low and they are rock bottom. So, for example, me as a smaller Pokemon store, I really don't buy too much sealed product. If anything, I avoid it just because the margins are terribly low, particularly for someone. So if you're unaware, in the UK, when you have a business similar to like the US and sales tax, we have a value-added tax of VAT, which is 20%, used to be less, but basically any product you buy, you have to pay an additional 20% VAT, which of course is just an additional tax that goes to the government. However, if you're a business buying off another business, so that would be like, for example, me buying off my distributor, if we're both registered, or if I'm registered as like a VAT registered business, I don't have to pay that VAT amount. However, there's all the headache and all the accounting and everything that comes with VAT, and I do actually try to stay under the threshold required to be a VAT registered business. It's roughly £90,000, so a little bit over 120,000 US dollars. So I try to stay under that amount. I mean, I obviously do everything part-time. In my own time, I work full-time as well. Thankfully I have a pretty good job, and earn reasonably well from that. So like it's not just about me having to do Pokemon full-time and getting a wage and a salary through that. So for me, I'm picking up these boxes basically. I'm picking up these boxes, including the additional, like the taxes, as I alluded to, for 95 quid, and maybe even a little bit more. And if you look on eBay right now, you can pick up boxes for that exact same price. So given fees, postage, you're losing money, probably losing 10 to 15 quid if you're really trying to sell at that really low price, and you're in a similar position to me where you're picking it up at that price, and at this point it's not worth my while registering as the business where I can actually not pay the tax. Because again, it's, for me, sealed product, I pick it up to keep for some time. I'm really not buying sealed cases and selling the boxes. It's not worth my time personally. I don't think so, given the margins, and I just don't think it's worth the effort as well. Something I can happy to talk about in another video as to why I don't do that, if anyone's interested. but it's not just a personal choice, it's also kind of a business decision as well. So what I normally do if I like the set is I will pick up a case and then just have a case lying around just in case. I have a case just there. Yeah, mostly as I said, if I like the set. So for example, I have a set, I picked up a case of Crown Zenith, but I opened a lot of it because I liked it a bit too much. Still need to get my hands on a bit more of that at some point. I have cases of a few other sets, Brilliant Stars, Lost Origin, Silver Tempest, right? Just sets that I thought were a bit more standoutish than some of the more poorer sets like the Battle Styles and the Chilling Reigns. Fortunately, don't have any Evolving Skies anymore, which is sad. Apologies, which is sad. But as I said, yeah, I'm not picking them up to flip. So for me, it was kind of, I do have a bit more of a, I guess, interesting perspective, a different perspective on buying and this kind of sealed product. So as I mentioned, Rudy did talk about the fact that obviously he thought at least it'd be a good idea to pick up these boxes that, you know, they're not going to get any cheaper, and he's right, they're really not going to get much cheaper, if anything, than they are right now. I've also noticed the single cards were probably lagging behind and maybe doing a little bit better, but they're really coming down now. I feel like probably a good time if you are interested in collecting the set itself is, you know, to buy the singles now. I imagine there seems to be such a lack of interest in Paldea Evolve right now that people just aren't really interested in opening it. We've got 151 really just taking control of, or like really guiding people's wallets at this point in time. There's a real lack of interest, and I think I'm sure allocations and printing numbers are as high as they were for Scarlet Violet base, but I just envisage so many fewer people opening Paldea Evolve. So it'd be interesting to see how that actually translates with the single cards, because I think they actually will do reasonably well from kind of here on forwards. And I personally am picking up a lot of the art rares and all that kind of thing. I'm not saying they're gonna Moonbreon VMAX, but I just think now would be the best time to pick those up. But another point I wanted to kind of raise in regards to what was mentioned in the video was the fact that what I've seen so far with the print quality as well, and it's obviously indicative of the fact that they are printing a large amount of product. The quality has been really poor, and if you're someone who's picking things up for personal reasons, for example, I would probably, you know, if you're picking it again, like if you're picking it up for opening purposes, for example, I don't even think that's a good idea right now, given that if you're picking up a box from the first few or the first print, the first wave, you're likely to just get a bunch of cards with terrible centering and really badly cut edges, and so far from potentially, you know, grading some PSA 10 hits that you might get, which a lot of people really enjoy doing when opening sealed product for themselves, myself included. So those were the kind of initial thoughts I had when he did mention to pick them up. And as I said, immediately I was like, no, I just don't think it's a good idea right now. Kind of have the same view with Scarlet Violet base as well. I still haven't seen like a decent quality control there. Be interesting to see how 151 is, just given again that it's gonna be the biggest set of the past few years. They're gonna really struggle to print it at a decent quality, given that I'm sure they'll want to meet the numbers that they and to kind of meet the interest and match the interest and demand for that, certainly. So yeah, those were just kind of my thoughts, as I said, from watching the video. And then I've seen a few other people mention and talk about this topic specifically. Nostalgianomics was another example of that. He's had someone who obviously talks a lot about modern and newer product and buying and keeping hold of that kind of thing, and kind of shared that sentiment again. I just don't think it's a particularly good idea. There's too much of the product lying around, and at the same time you're not going to see any movement on that product for a while. So I just don't think at this point in time it does make any sense to pick up any of those products. You can't, as the one thing Rudy said, of course, was, you know, you're not really going to get it cheaper than you are now. And whilst I don't disagree with that, there's probably better things you can do with your money than just buying a few cases of Scarlet and Violet base or Paldea Evolve right now, or even Obsidian Flames, to be honest. Given, yeah, sure, it's a Charizard set, some cool cards. There was the Tyranitar that was leaked the other day. The Charizard, the Terastallized Charizard looks pretty good. Given the trend we've seen so far with Scarlet and Violet base and Paldea Evolved, I probably would avoid that too, and probably focus mostly on 151. Although I imagine what we see with 151 is going to be what we saw with Crown Zenith. A lot of interest, but so much product that it's still not necessarily, you know, kind of flying high and doing anything crazy numbers and value wise. So the outlook, I guess, for at least the way I see things, for you know, potentially investing in modern sealed products, for me as of right now, is not necessarily a good thing. Not necessarily something to kind of put a lot of eyes on or put a lot of money into. I'd say there are a lot of opportunities outside of there. I would certainly say so. If you are someone who's looking at buying some sealed, modern sealed product, certainly wouldn't look at Scarlet and Violet so far. That might change as we go through the what's the word? As we get through the era, but I don't see it being the case as of right now. And if it was up to me, you know, if you asked me what I would do, again, no guarantees, of course, but I would certainly be looking at early era Sun and Moon, basically maybe all of Sun and Moon at this point, even though we've had a bit of an increase recently, so things are a little bit inflated right now, and then probably middle to end of Sword and Shield. But I think a lot of that kind of just immediate free tendies, as Rudy loves to say, coming from sealed Pokemon products, really gonna slow down, and probably has done given the latest sets. One thing I did think, or at least at the time when I picked up boxes of Lost Origin and Silver Tempest, is that they do better than where they are at right now, but of course they've had significant reprints and are still doing okay compared to the Scarlet and Violet. So I think that for me speaks volumes as to, you know, what people really have their heads into at the moment. And it seems like a lot of that right now is Japanese modern product more so than English, given the recent craze and recent craziness that's been going on. So yeah, generally those are some of my thoughts and feelings towards some of the, I guess, the Scarlet and Violet and the first couple of sets. 151 coming soon, which is really exciting. Hoping to get my hands on a decent amount of product for that. Obsidian Flames looks like a decent set. Don't think it's going to be enough to kind of change the trajectory of Scarlet and Violet boxes as of right now, but who's to know? We look back in 2 years time and we say what a bargain that the boxes were $90, $100 2 years ago. So, you know, a lot of people were saying the same thing about Rebel Clash 2 years ago. I mean, it's still a terrible set and still just not worth anywhere near where it is at the moment. Sale volumes are pretty low still, so that also says a lot. But you know, you asked me to pay 120 for it, I wouldn't be quick to snap your hand, that's for sure, with Rebel Clash. So again, we might see something with similar with Scarlet and Violet, and maybe Pokemon is just that great of a beast that it just continues to move and print product, and people eat it up, and things just continue to be absurd and crazy. But thank you for checking out the video. Obviously, I've kind of ranted a little bit about some of the just my thoughts about some of the Scarlet and Violet sealed product. If there's anything I'm missing or anything you wanted to contribute, please, you know, happy to have a conversation in the comments. Otherwise, please leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and hopefully I will catch you on the next one.